So with Zodiacs coming out in the not too distant future, a lot of people might not be able to afford 3 Zodiac Barrage, 2 to 3 Zodiac Trident, 2 to 3 Zodiac Broad Bull, and all the other cards you need for the fucking deck. So what are you going to be able to play? Well, I've got 5 budget options to help you compete in the Zodiac meta. What's going on, guys? It's Cimo, and today I'm bringing to you my top 5 budget decks for the February 2017 format. With Zodiacs being released just a couple weeks away, it's only a matter of time before they completely dominate the format, and so if you either don't want to pay for the deck, or if you can't afford to pay for the deck but you still want to play competitively, consider some of these budget options that you could build for roughly about $200 or less. So starting off with number 5, we have Shaddoll Trains. Now, Shaddoll Trains is really interesting because in the Zodiac meta, most of the times if a Zodiac player starts the game going first, they're going to leave a couple of Xyz monsters on the field, and that enables Shaddoll Fusion to be able to resolve for free because you're going to be sending materials from deck to graveyard. And in this respect, El Shaddoll Winda is an incredibly powerful tool, limiting your opponent to only being able to allow to be special summoning monsters once per turn, and that means they can't go into any of their crazy Zodiac Xyz plays because they can't continue to overlay because they're only going to get one summoned when it's their turn. And not to mention that Super Cannon Dreadnought Rail Dora, whatever the fuck it's called, the basically massive rank 10 Felgrand is incredibly powerful. And the fact that really Zodiac doesn't really have a solid answer to deal with that. And you know, Zodiac has the ability to use cards like Dimensional Barrier as well, but Shaddoll Trains has the flexibility to swap between Fusion and Xyz plays, so if one plan doesn't work and gets stopped by Dimensional Barrier, then you do have an alternative line of play that just doesn't leave you stuck in the dust. The deck is very explosive, it's good going first or second. Obviously you want to go first and set up your Dora as quickly as possible, or maybe even an El Shaddoll Winda or something like that, but you can also run cards as well to boost the consistency of the deck, like Allure of Darkness if you really just trying to turbo it out and really get to your combo pieces as quickly as possible, since you are running a complete Shaddoll engine as well. So the deck's really good going first and second. You know, it may not be the most consistent deck in the world, but it's still a very budget friendly option that you can play in the Zodiac meta. So moving on to number 4, we have probably one of the biggest glass cannon decks of all time, and that is Cyber Dragons. Now, Cyber Dragons have the ability to just completely end the game on turn 2, and an advantage of playing Cyber Dragons is that you're always going to want to go second, and your opponent's going to more than likely want to go first, so that means that you can completely make your deck built to go second, maining things like Kaijus, specifically Cimoooooooo, since it can be searched out with Cyber Repair Plant. You can main deck Denko Sekkas to stop things like Dimensional Barrier and all these other different cards. And it's totally fine, because if your opponent ends their turn, you know, with something like, you know, Daigusto Emerald and a Trident with a couple back row, you can simply just go something like Cimoooooooo over the Trident, Denko Sekka summon, lock out the back row, and then you could like Power Bond, go into like Cyber Infinity, or not Cyber Infinity, but Cyber End Dragon, or some other crazy play like that, and literally end the game that turn. So again, the deck is a very glass cannon-esque deck, but if your opponent isn't prepared for it, you can completely steal some wins with it, and it's a very viable competitive option. Cyber Dragons have done some competitive success in the past because people didn't expect the deck to just come out of nowhere, but going into games 2 and 3, it might get a bit more difficult because your opponent is going to know what you're playing, and they might force you to go first, which means you have to change up your plays. But with cards like Galaxy Soldier and Solar Windjammer to complement the deck, that also means you have access to cards like Cyber Dragon Infinity to make a very solid first turn lock, and you can cater your side deck to pretty much maybe go first if you know your opponent's going to force you to go first, knowing that you're playing Cyber Dragon. So again, the deck is extremely glass cannon, but it can totally be viable in this meta if the deck is built correctly. Now, moving on to number 3, we have Cosmo. Now, Cosmo's been seeing a bit of a resurgence in the meta lately, and that's mainly because of the fact that the Cosmo ships are untargetable, and we're moving into a meta specifically where cards are going to be doing a lot more targeting. And on top of that, with a card like Dimensional Barrier basically running rampant in every single meta deck, Cosmo doesn't rely on fusion summoning, ritual summoning, pendulum summoning, Xyz summoning, or synchro summoning at all. The deck is completely reliant. You could play Cosmo without an extra deck and do just fine, although I wouldn't recommend it, but being able to build a deck that's that powerful, even though Dark Destroyer is still at 1, is just super easy, and the deck still has a ton of explosive power behind it. If you want to upgrade and pay for a playset of Sanctums and Artifact Sights, that just boosts and takes the deck to an entirely new level, because Slip Rider has synergy with the artifacts, being able to pop them, summoning them, and Artifact Scythe locking down your opponent's extra deck pretty much will win you the game in the Zodiac meta. So being able to play a deck like that is really, really good. You know, the ships aren't able to be targeted. The pilots, while they are a little bit susceptible, all have the quick effects to be tagged out. So, you know, if you do have that Forerunner or that Dark Destroyer or anything like that. And let's also not forget that Dark Planet is an insanely powerful card as well. And especially considering, you know, we are in a format where spells are a very big majority part of every single deck. So overall, Cosmo is a very excellent choice. It's been getting first place in some regionals, and it's been doing it's been having some competitive success, and it's probably flying under the radar. Especially the fact too, the biggest thing you need to look out for is system down will still kill your deck, and because people are citing that for ABC, they can also cite it against you as well. So that's something that is a bit of a word of caution, but other than that, the deck is still very viable, and it's a very good budget option. Now moving on to number 2, we have Domain Monarch. Now Domain Monarch is probably the cheapest option on this entire list, mainly because it doesn't require an extra deck, and on top of that, basically 3 structure decks is all you need for the most part. And it's just crazy because a card like Domain of the True Monarch is just so good at locking down the opposing player's extra deck. And the fact that if you just get out any Monarch or even a Vanity's Fiend, because Vanity's Fiend has natural synergy with Monarchs, if you just get that out backed by, you know, Domain of the True Monarchs, or even, you know, March of the Monarchs if you want to play a card like that, that can pretty much win you a game, and your opponent might not be able to do a whole lot to stop you there. And it's really funny that an engine like that is just so powerful. Even though Pantheism of the Monarch is down to 1, which really cripples the deck's consistency, Allure of Darkness is still at 3, so you could cater the deck to be a lot more dark focused, and being able to lock out your opponent's extra deck not only stops Zodiacs, but also stops really any other type of deck that relies on the extra deck, which is, for the most part, every meta-relevant deck at the moment. So it's a really good option. The deck is incredibly strong, albeit neutered, but even so, it's a very viable option nonetheless. And for my number 1 pick for my top 5 budget options for 2017, this is going to be Barrier Statues. I can't talk about Barrier Statues enough. It actually got first place at an Asian championship where the entire field was primarily made up of Zodiacs, and that's just because, you know, summon Barrier Statue or Fossil Dyna, equip Moon Mirror Shield, and set trap cards. Zodiacs can't deal with that, so if you can open that up consistently enough, I mean, you could honestly win a tournament, and it's a very good sleeper deck. Just having that ability to do so is just honestly mind-blowing. I mean, sure, the deck isn't the most consistent thing in the world, but Card of Demise is still at 3, and not to mention it's probably at its lowest price it's ever been currently on the TCG market. So that's something to take note of. The deck doesn't need an extra deck because it's pretty much summon 1, set 5, pass. You know, it's just an incredible deck all around, and in a meta that is very heavily defined by special summoning, Barrier Statues can take you a long way. But that's gonna do it for my video, guys. Let me know down in the comments what your guys' favorite budget options are for February 2017. I'd really love to hear it. Thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and also be sure to back me on Patreon, because just by pledging $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again. We'll see you next time.